Hello out there! It's week 12 and it's another edition of the MCC News. I am once again your host, five-time MCC champion, Alan Morrow. Now, before we get to the news, it's just a quick reminder. Thanksgiving is coming up. We do have 3 games on Thursday of Thanksgiving and 1 game on Black Friday. Then it's back to regular scheduled games on Saturday and Sunday and Monday. Thursday matchups, Detroit versus Green Bay. Then we have Dallas versus Washington and 49ers versus Seattle. Then on Fridays, the Jets versus the Dolphins. So plan your lineups accordingly. Now let's get to the news. First topic, undefeated no more. Lee lost his first game. Lee 10-0, now 10-1. He lost to Tyra in a tight battle, 112.56 to 104.06. So very tight. It went down to the Monday night versus Pachenko for Lee and Jalen Hurts from Tyra. Jalen Hurts with a couple rushing touchdowns, 1 tush push, kind of put Tyra over the top. Lee lost Mark Andrews in it, and Stephon Diggs, low scoring for him. What's happening to Stephon Diggs? But with those 2 bad matchups, Tyra also kind of mirrored it. He had 0 from his kicker and only got 1.6 from Cooper Kupp. The biggest difference in this matchup was, even though Lee had the 2 highest scores of 25 points apiece in Lamar Jackson and Tyreek Hill, that was about it. Tyra had 5 players that scored 17.5 points or more. Devontae Adams was the lowest of that with 17.7. I believe the highest was a tie between Jalen Hurts and Kittle of 18.9. So those 5 players kind of matched for Lee's highs, and that was the biggest difference in there. So no more undefeated, no more winless teams. Everyone has at least a win or a loss. In week 11, pretty impressive stretch run from Lee there. Next topic. Good, but not good enough. Here we do have a couple here stats here for the highest points scored in a loss on the season. Obviously, there's been 11 teams that have scored the highest points of a week, but still lost. It's something that the Sleeper app gives us about every week. In this, Jim actually leads the whole league with 3. In week 1, week 2, and week 8, he scored the highest points of all the losing teams. Just tough matchups there. With that as well, Jeremy, who likes to say that he probably leads this category, does not. He does have 2. And sadly, it was week 9 and this past week of week 11. Week 9 against me, week 11 against Will. And that probably has caused Jeremy to miss the playoffs. So his team was putting up points, just didn't get those W's. Very interesting enough, I have one of them. Actually, I have 2 of them. One of them was only 99.14 points on that week. It's the only time out of the 11 that the highest point scored for a losing team was under 100 points. So all the other 10 were that. Like I said, Jeremy had 2, Jim had 3, myself and Ben Teese had 2, Will has 1, and Gabe has 1. And kind of with that as well, in the teams that have won, that the tough matchups and all that, only 3 times were the team that end up winning were not one of the top 3 scoring teams in the league in that week. That was myself in week 2, Lee in week 4, and Will this past week against Jeremy. With that, Jim does have the most scored points in a loss, where in week 8 he lost to Jeremy, and Jim scored 131.6 points, but Jeremy scored 142.7, and Jeremy won high points on that week too. He was the number 1 point getter. And with that, 4 out of the 11 weeks were won. The person who scored the most points in the loss first played the team that ended up having the high points in the week. So that's just some interesting stats there. I was surprised that Jeremy didn't lead this category for as much as he's talked about always scoring so high but losing every single week. But that was actually Jim. Jim has the biggest gripe about that. All right, now the biggest topic here. The playoff push. We are 3 weeks to the playoffs. We're in there. I have decided to call it. I have decided to call Jim, Binky, and Jeremy out of the playoffs. All 3 are 3-8. The best they can be is 6-8. most likely you're going to need 7 wins. Currently, we have 5 teams at 5-6 and 1 team at 6-5. So there is kind of 3 playoff spots still up to grabs. Will and Lee both have guaranteed themselves a playoff. All that, even the app says they've made the playoffs. Tyra, he's made the playoffs. Even though he's not mathematically guaranteed, he's made it at 7-4. I'm calling him in. With that, with 5, why do I believe at 6-8 none of those teams can make it? Well, out of the 5-6 teams, there's 2 matchups this week between 5 and 6 teams. So 2 teams are guaranteed to have 6 wins. James already has 6 wins. So it's really, and then with that position week in week 14, there's probably going to be a couple matchups where teams are guaranteed to get 7 wins, and it's just going to miss Jeremy and Jim and Binky just out of it. With that, Ben at 5-6, he's lost two straight. He has Lee and Will coming up in the next 2 weeks. It's going to be tough for him to probably push into getting that playoff spot right now. Losing to Jim and myself these last 2 weeks have probably hurt him pretty badly. James at 6-5 does have Jeremy and Tyra the next another two tough matchups. As we talked about, Jeremy can score points. He's just not winning games. Perhaps this is one of the games he scores points and wins. So James is on the cusp of maybe falling out of that playoff spot, especially with a couple teams guaranteed to get to 6 wins. Schrader with Doug and Jeremy. Doug has Schrader and Jim. Gabe has myself and Lee. So as of right now, I have arguably maybe the easiest path to it. I still have to do my job and win those games with Gabe and Binky coming up to get myself in a good position for week 14 position week that can maybe already be guaranteed a playoff spot by then. So that's a playoff push. 3 weeks left. It's tough. The next 2 weeks are, because you can get into that position week and actually have yourself out where teams are guaranteed to win and you can't surpass them in that win column. So it's going to be very tight here. It's going to be very exciting end of the season with 3 playoff spots up to grabs. So looking really forward to that. And with that, let's do the matchup of the weeks. And once again, it's matchups of the weeks. Kind of referenced it before. It is, the 2 matchups are Alan versus Gabe, 2 5-6 teams, and Doug versus Schrader, 2 5-6 teams. Once again, 2 of these 4 teams are guaranteed to have 6 wins and get to 500, and are going to have an inside path to get to that playoff spot. Very interesting here because of the kind of the weird scheduling with the Thanksgiving week. Out of the Thursday, Friday games, I only have Debo going. Gabe does have AJ Dillon, Kicker Moody, and the Jets defense going. So it can be very early on. By the end of Friday night, I'm going to know how big of a chance I have to advance, or maybe hopefully the only injury I'm dealing with is Justin Jefferson. Will he play on Monday night or not? That's a tough thing. If the Jets defense, AJ Dillon ends up going off, I may have to gamble on Justin Jefferson playing on Monday night if I'm going to have to score high points there. And with Doug and Schrader, Doug has Brandon Cooks and the Cowboys defense going on Thursday, while Schrader will have Sam Howell and the kicker of Dallas Aubrey going on Thursday, and on Friday having Raheem Mostert. So once again, with Sam Howell and Mostert are the 2 biggest players kind of going there, skill players going there. Schrader will know early by end of Friday if he needs to make any roster adjustments to score high points or guarantee at least some points and not go with a risky option to try to stay in that lead there. So it's going to be very interesting Thursday, Friday for this playoff push here. And with that, we have Tyra's Fab Thoughts. Very boring waiver claim period. It's kind of that time of the season. $25 for Odell Beckham to Bentis. $15 to Jordan Love for Jeremy. Jeremy just loved Joe Burrow, and apparently he wants to root for Jordan Love against the Lions on Thanksgiving Day. He's kind of trying to ruin Thanksgiving for everybody. Thanks a lot, Jeremy. Another interesting thing. There was no multiple money bids on any player this waiver period. There's only 3 players that had multiple bids, which was Jordan Love, Odell Beckham Jr., and Josh Downs. All of their second bids were all $0 bids. So therefore, Odell Beckham at $25, Jordan Love at $15 were extreme overpays. Josh Downs, I actually won Josh Downs and it was only a $4 bid. So it wasn't horrible there, but very interesting there. That brings us to the conclusion of the MCC News. I want to wish everybody out there a happy Thanksgiving. Everybody here at the MCC News a happy Thanksgiving as well. And as always, let's go Lions. Fuck the Packers.